All right, good morning everybody and welcome to this penultimate meeting of 2025. It's also the penultimate meeting of the triennium as well, but Josh can have that pleasure next time round. Let's start the meeting with a karakia led by our very excellent Taku Parai. Kia mau. Thank you, everyone. Let's move to apologies. We have an apology from Councillor Wehapi. We have Councillor Ford online. Hi, Izzy. And do we have Councillor Nalo? I'll put an apology for Councillor Nalo as well. Thank you very much. All those in favour? Right, let's move. We have a public forum today. You will have, and I've allowed to be tabled this document from the Pauatanui Residents Association. Can I invite the Residents Association? I don't know who you're going to come up, Kia Nau. Very good. Short straw, you have 5 minutes. A bell will ring at 4, and you've got support as well. No, Mary, thank you. Silent partner. So, we ready? Are you ready to deliver? Your 5 minutes starts now. Thank you.
Thank you. Short notice, but we saw the agenda for this meeting and there's an item on it, item 6, report 7.4 and table 1, page 61 has a bit about an unnamed Esplanade Reserve. Since the ability to split sections below 4 hectares, which has only come with the proposed district plan, no one had realised at that stage that this triggered Esplanade Reserves, Esplanade Strips, all the things of the Resource Management Act. So now it's happening, people are not, well, there's a couple of issues going on. Council appear to be going down the track of they want Esplanade Reserve, and I think that's been written into the district plan to steer it in that direction. But under the Resource Management Act, Esplanade Strip is an available option. There's a large number of concerns within the community around it. The other thing that's come out of meetings with residents, with council staff, was that, and this is all fed back to us, so not guaranteed, but probably pretty accurate, is that there is a desire coming from, it appears to be the Parks team, to gain a link from Pauatanui Village through to Battle Hill, all the way along that string through there, which makes sense, and if it's for protecting waterways and things, there's value in it. But from a large number of the residents' viewpoint, there's some that have engaged in this subdivision process, realised they're going to lose a chunk of their land to a reserve and decided not to. So straight away that's going to limit any possible full link from the village through. If people don't subdivide, don't do anything, it stays as it is. The other thing that's happened in the past is we're aware of, with one of our members, they had to go through the process of doing an Esplanade Reserve when they did a subdivision back in early 2000. They did it all, and within a period of time council handed it back to them because they didn't want the costs of everything that was associated with maintaining it. We're very aware of the rates issues and the pricing and things, and for some of us that had our values doubled in the last QV because of the subdivisions being able to be undertaken, it's had a reasonable impact on our rates, different to the others around us. We're looking for an open discussion with council so that if there is an intention to try and get a strip from the village to the Battle Hill, and there's other strips that public want as well. There's in the past at our Residents Association or village meetings and planning, they wanted access from Moonshine through to the village as well. So there's other areas. Some public do want that access, and we're not disagreeing with that by any shot. What we're looking for is an ability for people to have a choice between a reserve or a strip, because the strip has various advantages for council. The reserve, I believe, and I may be wrong on some of this because it's only the last few days I've really started digging into this, I understand that a reserve requires council to pay half the fencing, all the usual things that go along council-owned land. They're responsible for the maintenance. We've already got examples within our community where maintenance isn't being done on council-owned property for streams and keeping things clear. I live in Flighties Road. The start of Flighties Road, Suzanne, that used to live on the corner where council purchased to sort out the issues and where the roundabout's going. At that stage, I believe the creek through there with all the willow trees was owned by her, and we were trying to get that part of the stream clean because obviously we'd had several flooding issues up that road over the last 20 odd years, and some of them were pretty severe. We couldn't achieve that. Shit, that went quick.
It does.
All right, in summary, I think there needs to be a chance for open discussion. I would like to see the item on table 1, the Paikock Hill Road Esplanade, reserved and held, or pulled out of this particular acceptance if that's a possibility, and allow for some proper community discussion and find out if this is a sensible way forward, if these blocks of land are going to create extra costs for ratepayers and things that haven't necessarily been considered.
Thank you, Ken. Mayor Baker has a question.
Well, maybe a question for officers, because I don't disagree with what you were saying, Ken. Reserve versus strip, I didn't think we fenced or did fencing on either of them. And the cost to council, we're not maintaining what we've already got. So I'd just like an answer from officers, whether it's today or whether it's after this paper's removed.
Maybe I suggest that we wait
Yeah.
until the item, and then we can talk about that. Are there any other questions of the Pāwataunui Residents Association? Yes, Councillor Filo.
Hey, thanks for coming in. Just wanted to clarify, so is what you're sort of asking for today for us to table this item so that we can have a more fulsome discussion about it and later?
Yeah, that's the intention. Just that one parcel. We've got no problem with the rest of the item. It's just that one item on that table. So table 1, unnamed
I'll
Esplanade
address it.
Reserve.
I'll address it in a second, Councillor Filo. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions? If not, thank you very much for coming along. You might want to stay for a minute or two because that brings us to, I'll just go through the other items before we get to the main items on the agenda. That's public forum. Are there any conflict of interest declarations that anyone wants to make? No, there being none, I'll move on to notification of extraordinary business, of which there is none. And that moves us to confirmation of the minutes of the 7th of August 2025. I'm going to move the minutes, seconded by Councillor Trillin. Are there any corrections to the minutes, alterations? There being none, I'll put them. All those in favour? Those against? Carried. So that brings us to reports. I am going to move item 7.4 so that we discuss it immediately now. So that item 7.4 was about these reserves designation, reserve land classifications. So I'm going to move that to be the first item. I am going to move the report for discussion, noting that, that's my recommendation, that the piece lot 4 DP 603419, the very reserve that the Residents Association have been talking about, that be withdrawn, excluded from this, and that officers come back at a later stage when we can have a more fulsome discussion around this, because it is quite complicated and there are some issues to talk about. So I'm going to move the report, be on the table, excluding that particular lot, seconded by Councillor Duncan. Is there any discussion about, officers, do you want to come to the table, Matt, and talk to us about the rest of the...
Tēnā koutou katoa. Through the chair, the purpose of this report is to seek council approval or committee approval to classify the land outlined in Table 1. The land outlined in that table has been vested in council through subdivision processes, so through resource consents. Yeah, and so the land listed in that table is currently in council ownership, and the classification tabled here is essentially the last step, turning them from a fee simple piece of land into a reserve and all the maintenance responsibilities and rights that gives council for those pieces of land. That's probably it at a high level, just on what the remainder of the report states. Yeah.
Yeah, no, understood. Are there any questions from councillors? Yes, Councillor Hayward.
Thank you. Mātua upoko mihi kai mahi me kai kanohira katoa. Thank you, officers, for bringing forward the item, noting the amendment being made by the chair. In terms of the processes that are detailed in the item on notice, I'm trying to understand how, obviously we have a responsibility under our statutory duties of the Reserves Act to consult, and it looks as though it would be a notice 1 month for people to give any objection, and then if necessary going to hearings. If I recall reading the document on notice, where does the significance policy kick in with regards to our council processes? Does that supersede our statutory responsibilities in a matter like this? Considering I think it's probably clear to say that it is a significant change that would require, in general, consultation. Kia ora.
This would not trigger our significance policy.
Okay, so in noting that we've had in public forum a delegation that has come from affected residents and the potential challenge that this has raised, which has led to the proposed amendment, would officers have considered an approach that would allow a far more fulsome use of tools as part of its engagement process, so as to address these issues through the consultation process rather than just as it is our statutory requirements?
Matt, you.
Through the chair, yeah, I can provide some technical guidance around this particular, so the items or the parcels set out in Table 1. So they're being classified under what's known as Section 16.2a of the Reserves Act, which when you receive parcels through subdivision, there's no requirement to consult as long as the classification is the same as what it was vested as. So if we receive, say, a piece that was vested as rec reserve and then we decide to classify it as something else, then we would have to consult. If it's received as recreation reserve or whatever, and we classify it in the same way, then there's no duty to consult under the Reserves Act.
Right, I understand that, and that's conveyed in point 23 of the item on notice as well. What I'm trying to ascertain is whether or not there was a role here for officers to have considered an additional series of work to prevent potentially the risk that we have had to address by having to pull back one item in advance. Was there a way that could have been prevented?
Councillor, I think potentially, and I think through this process today, we will be continuously improving and learning, and that might be something that feeds back through this, what we're about to discuss.
Thank you for the response. I have no more questions on this.
Okay, Councillor Trillin, I just wanted to clarify then, given that, very good question, what would be the likely way forward now that you envisage, so that we can come to some, or that councillors can come to some sort of conclusion and make a decision about this? Because it is going to be ultimately council's decision, whatever council is in place.
For this specific item around Esplanade Reserve,
Around, I'm talking specifically around Esplanade versus.
it seems to me that the issues that have been raised lend themselves to a wider discussion with you around the consequences and detail of what we're talking about.
Yes, exactly.
Before we get to a point where we give you advice around a decision.
Fine. Okay. Councillor Trillin, you have a question?
Yeah, thank you very much. Obviously related to this, and so if the questions are better left to a later workshop, then feel free to push those back, but I'll ask them now. So on this topic of the Esplanade Reserves versus strips, could you talk us through what process you go through in determining whether a relevant piece of land is designated as a reserve versus as a strip? What are the things that you look at? How do you make that decision?
Do we want to do this now, Councillor Trillin, or can we do this later on when we're having a more fulsome discussion of this, or would you like to?
I recognise we're probably not going to resolve the issue today, but to be honest, I don't fully understand what this.
Neither do I.
And I'm conscious that we've got residents here that have asked this, and it's been ongoing for a while. So I think it's a good opportunity. So if possible, I'd like at least a high level response, and maybe we can get into the detail more.
Yeah, I think we need to get into the detail later, but is there a high-level response that we can give at this stage?
I can just talk to the Resource Management Act, and so under the Resource Management Act, we've created our district plan, and obviously we all know that that was widely publicised and worked on for many years, and in the district plan, the preference is for, well, it actually says reserves, Esplanade Reserves, not Esplanade Strips. So the district plan is asking for one and not the other. As we know, it's a major process to go through for a plan change, and at the moment, the government has said we cannot do plan changes. So that's I'll just leave that with you as part of the context for the answer.
Thank you. Just a little bit further to that, if that's okay. Are you able to speak a little bit to what the underlying policy rationale is for that preference? So we've put that into the district plan. From a council perspective, is there a particular advantage to us using a reserve as opposed to a strip?
Through the chair, I can talk to that in some degree. So as Helen said, yeah, there's a policy in the district plan, it's subdivision policy 12, and it says that, essentially the preference is for Esplanade Reserves over Esplanade strips, and we have to then, if we go for if an Esplanade strip is the preferred option, we have to essentially justify that. And there's a list of criteria in there. I don't have those on the top of my head right now, but it's essentially if you can achieve similar outcomes in a better way, then go for the strip. Otherwise, the preference is for reserves. That's at a really high, low detail level. In terms of the advantages, I guess, or the relative advantages and disadvantages of reserves versus strips, an Esplanade Reserve creates a static parcel of land, whereas an Esplanade Strip is essentially a legal overlay of 20 metres from the stream edge that then moves with the stream, because as we all know, streams move around; they don't sit in one place. So, that's the key difference really. Is one's a static parcel of land that's in council ownership, in theory owned by one entity, whereas Esplanade Strips do move with the stream, but they're owned by multiple entities. So, I guess from a parks perspective, there are management advantages to the Esplanade Reserve approach, as you have a single landowner essentially that manages that string of reserves or reserve.
You.
Yeah, I've got one more.
That's.
Is that?
Well,
Anything further?
that's edifying as far as I'm concerned, and I'm sure it will be for other councillors.
Yeah,
You have another
that is
question,
very
and then
helpful.
Mayor Baker has a question.
Yeah, I'm just two clarifications. So the first, does that mean in a situation where, so a resident subdividing, it looks like as a result of that there's some land that they have that is going to be classified as a reserve. If they want it to instead be as a strip, they then need to provide evidence to show they can fulfil those criteria. Does the burden for that sit on the landowner? Is that how that process would work?
Through the chair, that's correct. It's essentially resolved through the resource consent process, yeah, where the burden of evidence is on the applicant to demonstrate.
Okay, cool, thank you. And then my last question on this is, am I correct in understanding that the nature of the language that's in the district plan at the moment, if council wanted to change the way this was being applied, is the only pathway for us achieving that an alteration to the district plan itself? Or are there other policy guidance processes that we can influence without having to amend the actual district plan if we wanted to adjust how this was being applied?
My view, without benefit of having thought a lot about this beforehand, but categorically, if you want to change something, a policy, objective, rule that's in the district plan, it has to go through a plan change. So there's, as far as I'm concerned, there isn't another way. But as officers, we can have a chat about that afterwards.
Okay, I mean, Mayor Baker.
Well, just wanting to confirm, so Esplanade Strip is owned by, stays in the ownership of the owner, and they have to maintain that land but give council access. And then the reserve is owned by council, and 9 times out of 10 we don't look after it, we just leave it there. And if the stream grows either way, they lose the land.
Through the chair, the strip, yes, would be held in the original landowner's ownership, and then basically what would happen is there's an agreement of some kind between the landowner and council, and that
I just wanted to confirm I had that right.
Yeah.
I've done the whole length of Duck Creek on this, so I do know the rules, but I'm wanting to make sure you confirm it for everyone else.
Thank you, Mayor Baker, and thank you, officers. I think, unless there are any other questions, we should end this discussion now and put the motion, because obviously there is more information to come before councillors, and it would be useful to see some, examples, officers as well, when we go to discuss this further. So, yep, I'm now going to put the motion with the exclusion of the unnamed Esplanade Reserve and Paikakariki Hill Road. I'm going to put that notion, and I also note that there is a correction under recommendation 3. Haunui Way is actually Haunui Road. All right, noting that correction. So I now put the motion. All those in favour?
Aye.
Those against? Carried. Thank you, Residents Association members. So, councillors, we now move to what is on our notes here, item 7.1, which is now item 7.2, welcoming plan. Can I invite? I'll put the plan. I'll put the recommendations. Seconded by Councillor Hayward. Thank you. Officers want to come to the table. Have we got Cecilia? Not Reuben, just Cecilia. Reuben's away. That's fine. I'll let you talk to the plan, Cecilia. I know we've discussed this before. Is there anything you want to say before we discuss it? Any key points you want to make?
Through the chair, thank you. If I may, I just quickly go through that, and then if there are any questions, I'm happy to take that.
Sure. We have read it, so you don't need to go through the whole thing. So you can take it as read. I just wondered whether there are any key points you want to make, because this is up so that we're going to adopt this plan. That's what the recommendation is.
Through the chair, thank you. Yes, just a couple of points I would like to highlight, please.
Highlight a couple of points. That would be great.
I think some of the key points I would like to highlight is through the engagement process, we have received the feedback from our multicultural communities that they wish to have council to maintain the program following the decision of the immigration seed funding in early March next year to support the program's longevity. And furthermore, we have representatives from our multicultural communities that came and presented during the public forum in July, advocating for the continued funding for the Welcoming Communities Advisor role. And the plan is designed against the 8 standard framework, and the outcomes can be delivered through the current LTP by working collaboratively with our iwi partner and stakeholders and community groups, as well as our teams as key input and implementer through the council. And we are working to develop implementation plan, and it's a work in progress. And in adopting the plan, it will further unlock the additional funding from Immigration New Zealand through Stage 2 accreditation that will help to activate some of the some of the actions captured in the plan. And the monitoring will be managed by the partnership and the ED team. And by the end of 2027, the plan needs to be reviewed so that it's fit for purpose and captures the learnings from the monitoring and evaluation process. So thank you.
Thank you, Cecilia. I'll open it up for questions. We have Councillor Ford, Mayor Baker, and then Councillor Hayward.
I did have a question. It was specific to the first point that was raised by the officer, and I think she actually answered it in subsequent comments that she made. So it was really around the funding. Because it ends in March 2026, I did wonder whether, because it's a government-required initiative, obviously, whether it was going to be continuing post that point. You know how I hate it when government gives us stuff and they don't give us money. Yeah, that was it.
The plan will continue. The funding that we have received finishes. So
Finishes when? Sorry, just remind me.
it is March
Early
next
March.
year.
March next year.
March next year. So we have been deliberate in delivering a plan that is capable of being delivered within current resources.
Sorry, can you just explain that further? So does that mean when the funding ends next year, the council will have to make a decision about continuing funding, or funding will all be available?
We can do it within existing resources. There is probably an open question about whether the council puts more money into a specific role. So the role itself finishes, but like many things, we would propose to deliver this through the range of people that we already have on staff.
Just so it's clear for councillors, that's all.
Yeah, no, that's cool. That answers it for me too. Thanks.
Thanks. Mayor Baker?
It's not a question, it's a comment.
Oh.
It's just, sorry, fully support this. It's been an excellent way to actually communicate with the extra community that we don't get in. The diversity in Porirua calls for this, so I fully support this. And if we have to, we've got a long-term plan coming next year and the next council can look at those sort of things. But completely support this program. It's working really well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Baker. Councillor Hayward.
Kia ora no mātou upoko me he kai mahi. Cecilia, thank you very much for coming and speaking to the item on notice and the preparation of the item. You've raised what is covered basically in points 13 and 14 of the document regarding the future funding of this project once central government ends funding. My understanding is that, normally in a triennium we don't have a long-term plan until year 2, noting that the unusual circumstances of our likely divestment of water assets provides us an opportunity to have a more significant type of process with regards to the financial year next year. Is that the intention of officers to prepare something knowing that there will be a significant policy trigger leading to a much broader conversation that would have happened anyway because of the water asset transfer?
That is a rather more complex question. So the water services legislation enables us to make an amendment to the LTP easily without going through a full long-term plan process. We propose, and we have not socialised this issue with councillors, but we propose to do that before year end. And then we will have an annual plan next year. Having said that, councillors can, through that process, introduce both new things and cut old things through an annual plan process. So you would not see an annual plan as an impediment to making changes. We make changes every annual plan. So you can introduce new issues and, I note a number of you have called for line-by-line assessments of our rate, of our budget. So, that of course is also a change to our annual plan. But so don't link it to that long-term plan, but you can make changes through our normal processes.
Satisfy your question?
It does. May I have one comment in regards to this?
You may have a comment.
Thank you. I appreciate to use the word that was used by the chair earlier, edifying. I think it's an entirely appropriate word to use in regards to the responses given to my questions, and thank you for that. This is a long process. It's actually been going for several years, and the government program that was offered started as an opt-in. Council had to vote to opt in. I was around the table, and you guys all were too when we voted to opt in. Now, at a certain point, central government was probably always going to discontinue this program for whatever reason, their priorities, their show in town, I suppose. So there was always going to be a question as to what degree we as a council want to continue the work or improve upon the work that has been done already. That is a challenge for the next triennium. I will reiterate what I said during the workshop session, that the stakes for, and I'm trying to not do this without being political, the stakes for the new triennium will be whoever's around this table will have to shepherd that discussion with the wider community. I hope, for our sake, that we do not drop this important program. Kia ora.
100%.
I'd call that lobbying, Councillor Hayward, but that's fine. That's fine. Councillor Duncan, have you also, Councillor Filo? Yeah.
Yeah. Look, I think it's fantastic, and I echo the sentiments of the mayor on this. I think it's a great investment in the future for Porirua. Just one thing that intrigued me was on page 17, the graph on languages spoken, and I wondered what census data elicited this information, because I can't believe there are more Spanish speakers than Tongan speakers in Porirua. That just struck me as really odd. Also, that there's only 14,000 English speakers in Porirua. So the graph seems to sort of, it doesn't tell us anything really. I wonder whether it's any value in that draft plan at all, really.
Through the chair, the stats were taken from 2023 census. So it's based on the results or the information that is supplied to the census forms. So that was validation behind it. And we do have a large Colombian community that speaks Spanish, and also from Mila, South American, that do speak Spanish as well. So that adds up.
Yeah, I went through the census data actually to have a look to see where it was. I think probably the question that they posed was pretty fudged, and it was based on a New Zealand-wide average rather than Peru. I don't mind. I wouldn't die in the ditch over it, but it just seemed to me.
Okay, I'll take it that you're not going to die in the ditch, but it is a fair point in terms of the data that's contained in these things. We don't want it to be misleading, but you're just taking census data, so fine. Councillor Filo.
So just want to take this opportunity to say thank you for the work that you've done, Cece, and I I did have just a quick question about something you said earlier. I thought I heard you say unlocking the funding around stage 2, but I didn't quite catch all of it. Could you just explain that, please? What you were talking to?
Yes, I did. Thanks for the question, Councillor Wheeler. So it's the additional funding, one-off funding from Immigration New Zealand once we have applied for and achieved stage 2 accreditation. We are at stage 1. And by Council adopting the plan, that will help lead us into applying for stage 2.
Okay, so does that mean that come March 2026, is that included in stage 2, or is that in addition to?
It will be up to us to apply before the immigration funding ceases, comes to an end. So if we do apply, because there are 2 periods during the year that we can apply for accreditation. One is around May, one is around November. So if we do apply for stage 2 in November and get through the application and get it approved, then we are very likely to get additional funding, which is $9,500 to help activate actions captured in the plan.
So it's $9,500 is
The one-off, the one-off additional funding to activate actions.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Very good. Are there any other questions, comments? I just reiterate the compliments around the table from all of council. Good work. So with that, I'll put the motion or put the recommendations. All those in favour? Those against? Carried. Thanks, Cece.
Thank you very much.
That now moves us to item 7.2 on here, but 7.3, which is the Dog Control Annual Report, remembering that we're being asked to receive this report, and it is an annual one. And I understand, Mia, you're going to, I'm going to move it to put it on the table. Do I have a seconder? Yes, Mia Baker. It would have been Councillor Weehappy, but she's not here. Okay, so we have it on the table. Is there anything you want to say, take it as read? Is there anything you want to say, Mia, before we open up for questions?
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of highlights from me. Firstly, to start, that unfortunately the author of this report is on bereavement leave. However, we do have officers in attendance if there are any urgent questions, so we'll do our best. This year we have taken a more proactive approach to reporting against our regulatory services. So you have received 2 quarterly reports against animal control. Just wanted to note that this is something that will continue to allow more discussion on some of the key items and trends. This report is our annual statutory report and it covers 12 months up to June 30. A couple of highlights: almost 98% of known dogs are now registered. This is an increase from the year prior. To give some context, we went from 1,065 unregistered dogs to 129 this period. More registered dogs mean less infringements and less impoundments, so that's shown in the report. Part of the reason that this has occurred is that officers have really focused on engagement and education rather than going straight to blunt enforcement tools. I'll let them answer any other questions or give any other context.
Thank you. Mia. I'll open it up. Are there any questions, councillors? Councillor Hayward.
Kia ora no, kia koutou. Thank you again for the providing of this item on notice. Please, I'm sure that I won't be alone in saying this, the condolences to our staff member responsible for their family bereavement. My questions may better be answered. If they can't be answered at a high level, then I'm sure that we can find a way to have those questions answered, noting that this is just a report. One is, in terms of the community engagement that council officers undertake, it's noted the relationship that it has with the RSPCA, but also, SPCA, New Zealand, but also has there been meaningful dialogue with Huha, who also have a role in part of the rehoming of animals from time to time?
Do we have a... Yes, yeah, please do come to the table, because otherwise we might not hear you.
Through the chair. Thank you for that question. So we do use a wide variety of rehoming agencies throughout the Wellington district. We do have quite a good relationship with Hōhā, but we deal with dogs and they have a very limited amount that they're able to actually take on. So we haven't been able to engage with them with rehoming too much, but we have been able to use their resources or vice versa, just with guidance on other things if we get like a odd stock or something at the pound, which is very rare.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Next question, if you want. With regards to the existing facilities for impounding dogs, there has been talk over multiple meetings around improvements to the facility that had been discussed in LTPs, for instance. Can officers give a commentary on where that is and any timeframes around any remaining improvements made to the facility?
So we have already done some upgrades, which is in our inside kennel run. So I believe that's pretty much completed. There is just one or two things that is left outstanding, but otherwise that's pretty much completed. And there are still talks about the remaining budget there to continue any more further improvements.
Sorry to put you on the spot about this one as well. This may be another question that may have to come back, and appreciate that answer. With regards to those items left outstanding, do any of those pertain to, in effect, an increase in capacity for dogs to be impounded in that current location?
So there has been, in the upgrades, there's been no increase with the number of impounded dogs that we can house. I think currently we can house about 30 dogs. It's probably a little bit more than that, so don't quote me on that one. But the areas that we're looking to improve are more on the outside areas, just for more exercise runs. But at the moment, we can manage as it is, so yeah.
Again, this might be another question that may need to be brought back, certainly for the new triennium, and it is in regard to new initiatives that have been that may be undertaken by animal control, noting the extraordinarily good results and the proactive engagement approach that has been taken with the community. One that has been clearly noted already is the issue of rehoming of those dogs, preventing them from having to be impounded by council. What additional insights do officers have based on their knowledge of the Porirua situation, the Wellington situation, the nationwide situation, of any other measures that we could be undertaking that would be considered a new way of being able to deal with the overall number of dogs that are being impounded, and by using rehousing to prevent that burden that is sitting inside the facilities that we currently have?
Yeah, so as you can probably already imagine, there is already a nationwide struggle. A lot of it does come to education. So whenever we do get those calls for surrenders, we often go for the education side of things. We will educate them, try and give them other avenues that they can go down, so other rehoming agencies that they can look at, even give them advice on training and things like that that might lead them in a better position to actually keep the dog. Our ultimate one is coming back to desexing. So desexing is a very important thing because you end up with an unwanted litter of puppies. Those go out to places like SPCA, and then that means any dogs that we do get surrendered or collect, and there's not a home for them to go to. You're just in this cycle, and it's across the whole country too. But the ultimate one's desexing, and that's where we try often push for that.
He whākau tū pai, very good answer. May I have one comment and then I'll close up? Just to reiterate the enormous work that has been done demonstrated in this report by officers. I would want to, communicate to them my esteem for the work that's been done in this space. And I'm sure that Councillor Weehapi, if she were here, she would also want me to also sing your praises as well. I hope that the new triennium provides an opportunity for council to seek out with the leadership of officers on additional measures around community-led rehousing efforts. There may very well be examples used in other jurisdictions that may be as illustrative of a pathway forward, in the hopes that A, by using community, it does reduce the burden on ratepayers, but also provides a demonstrated capacity for manaaki, even for animals in our Pine City. Kia ora.
Thank you, Councillor Hayward. Councillor Duncan has a question, and then Mayor Baker.
Yeah, it's not so much a question as a comment. Look, I want to echo the sentiments of great work you guys are doing. It's fantastic. I've walked an average of 20 kilometres a day for the last 3 days, putting things in letterboxes, and I have not been molested by dogs, not one roaming dog. So thanks for that.
I also comment your slender figure, Councillor Duncan, reflecting that effort. Mayor Baker, sorry.
Thank you, sorry. In relation to our off-leash areas, specifically Camborne Walkway, how often do they actually monitor that? Because we're getting regular reports from dogs going into people's properties there and attacking their livestock that they have there, their chickens and those stuff. And once they get a rush of blood, as we know, one dog, then we get more. What are we actually doing about that? Or can we even do anything? Because we can't fence that as council, obviously, on that reserve. But do you monitor those more often when they come in or not?
So we are a team of 5 active animal control officers, and you've probably seen through the reports of kind of where a lot of our resources are kind of pulling towards, especially where you see the most of uncontrolled dogs. The more reports that we do get also does dictate where we are pulling our resources. So if we get more reports for Camborne Walkway, then definitely that's something that the officers will focus a lot more on their rounds. We do get the reports for incidents out in that area, and appropriate enforcement action is taken. I don't have a...
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
Are there any other questions? Can I just add to what Mayor Baker has said about Camborne Walkway? It's not just Camborne Walkway, it's also the beach. And I know there's been some issues raised around signage, which I assume you'll report back to us at some stage in terms of, what is possible there. I'm a dog owner. I walk my dog up there as well. Signage is not clear to me either. So I just make that point in terms of going forward. But Councillor Filo?
Thanks for raising that, Councillor Leggett, about the beach. I was going to say that too. And thanks for this report. I did have a quick question from a couple of residents who I've spoken to. They got a bill for their registration, but their dog had passed away. And they were trying to sort it out, and they were told that they had to give a death certificate, so they were struggling with that because not everybody's dog goes to the vet, and not everybody can afford to go to the vet if they wouldn't necessarily take their dog to the vet if it's died as well. So I'm just wondering, is that like the general process for to report when the dog has passed away? Or?
Yeah, so because we have about 5,500 dogs in the district, and it is the owner's responsibility to notify us of any changes in that. The normal process is to provide a death certificate, but there are alternative options that we can do if they aren't able to provide that.
What are those alternative options?
We do have a declaration of death form that they can sign just to declare that the dog has passed, or we do often take, a lot of the times people get their dog maybe cremated or buried, and so sometimes there's like an officer might just come out and just verify that there is no dog at the property.
Okay, cool. Thank you for clarifying that.
Any other questions or comments?
Just a wee one. We're both looking for the data on how many dogs put down for the last. Can't find it.
I just can't remember.
So it's on page 10, and there was 85 that were euthanised during the 24-25 year. That is down. Yeah.
Are there any other questions, councillors? I just reflect the general comment, great mahi and with limited resources, so well done. All those in favour? Those against? Carried. Thank you. That brings us to item 7.4, the Strategic Priority Report on Climate Change. I'll move it to get onto the table. Seconded by Councillor Trillin, of course. Now,
Me again.
Mia, again, you want to make some general comments about the report?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just a couple of comments, as this is the first report of its kind. So our approach to strategic priority moving forward is likely to take the same form. We're planning on reporting against all of our strategic priorities early in the next triennium ahead of the new council setting their strategic direction. So in the past, we've of course reported against our strategic priorities, but they've been across various reports, namely the major project report, the annual report, and performance reporting, as well as updates against each strategy. This report and framework is intending to consolidate some of that data and bring it all together. It's iterative. We're open to what works and what doesn't. We'll likely review the frequency of this when we set the new strategic priorities and what that reporting looks like. So just a bit of context about that. And over to Helen and team with any.
So I'll now open it up for questions or comments. Councillor Trillin.
Thank you very much. A couple of comments and questions, and it's all sort of intermingled, so I'll just go through what I've got here. First, I wanted to start by strongly endorsing this approach around reporting on strategic priorities. This is a really good report, as my high-level feedback. I'm really looking forward to seeing this sort of reporting and approach being taken around our other strategic priorities as well. I think it's entirely appropriate in terms of actually reflecting on and making sure that we're delivering on our strategic priorities. So, first of all, thank you for that, but this is really good, and you definitely want to see more of it. In terms of the report itself, really good level of detail. I support the broad direction of travel that's been identified. I think it's appropriate that we largely pick this work up around the refreshing this strategy in the new triennium. I did want to clarify how early in the next triennium is it likely that this work will begin to be actively progressed and worked through with council?
Kia ora tātou. Firstly, could I introduce James King, who's our new climate advisor, who's a principal in this area, and he'll be concentrating on adaptation work going forward. Unfortunately, Baptiste, who's our climate pollution expert, is actually off sick today. I suspect that it's likely to come to you very early in the new triennium. Let's say, March time, something like that. What we're doing is that we're working with Ngāti Toa around the recommendations that came out of the Climate Assembly, and they would very much like to come and present that to council in the new triennium, and unfortunately we weren't able to make the dates work for this this period, and present those, and then we can gauge from the council which recommendations would be appropriate for us to put into our refresh strategy.
Cool, thank you very much. That sounds really good, and yeah, we're really looking forward, hopefully, to hearing about the recommendations from the Climate Assembly, which I won't get into now, other than to say, really incredible initiative, great piece of work. Thank you to Ngāti Toa for leadership on this, incredibly important. I had another area of clarification. Throughout the report, there's a lot of reference to Porirua City and actions from Porirua City. And my understanding of what it's reporting on is actually that where we're saying Porirua City, we mean Porirua City Council. And just in terms of how we're characterising stuff, I think it would be useful to more clearly differentiate. So in particular, like looking at page 44, item 17, it talks about the focus on reducing Porirua City's emissions. We haven't been focused on Porirua City's emissions, we've been focused on the council's emissions. So I just wanted to clarify that, just to make sure that it's really understandable to someone who's reading over this. So that's just a quick comment. In terms of the particular areas within the report, mitigation, agree on the areas of focus around landfill emissions, gas boilers, looking at carbon capture, I was glad to see highlighted, and I think that's particularly something that we should highlight more as a co-benefit in other programs that we are doing. So for example, when we're talking about our riparian planting project, actually a genuine co-benefit of that is the carbon capture element as well. So I think continuing to focus on that. That doesn't mean that we're setting up big projects specifically just for the purpose of carbon capture. It means we're recognising when it is that genuine co-benefit in other work that we are doing. Just wanted to recognise that. Around adaptation, agree with the process that the next step here is beginning to engage with the community. I'm very firmly of the view that we just need to get on with this. I know we've spent a lot of time not wanting to move too quickly because we're conscious that the government is figuring things out. We want to work with them. We've been waiting for years. I don't have any faith that they're planning on sufficiently prioritising this, to be honest. So I think we just get on with it. The impression I get from the report is that that's what we are planning. So this is just me giving a full-throated endorsement of that approach. I think we just go ahead and get on with it. On the transition to a low-carbon city, this is probably the area I feel that we've talked about the least. And I think that makes sense. I think you start with looking internally and then thinking about adaptation, but ultimately developing and working towards a low-carbon city is going to be really important in the long term. And one of the things that I noticed in the report was when it was talking about the different things that we've looked at, there was a big red cross next to developing policy around this particular objective, so council policies to achieving a low-carbon city. So I want to see us do some work in that space. I wanted to test something that I've seen. There's been some advocacy and some reporting around recently. We don't have to get massively into the detail today, but I guess to signal that I want to keep talking about this and hopefully into the new triennium if I'm fortunate enough to come back, around the campaign that's being run by Rewiring Aotearoa New Zealand around councils potentially providing low-cost loans to assist homeowners and businesses with electrification. So the pitch around it is that you can basically do it in a cost-neutral way through leveraging our ability to borrow at a good rate. The campaign's engaged with central government around this. There's been an indication of a broad level of support across the political spectrum from both the government and the opposition. Is this something that we have seriously looked at? Do you have any views around whether or not this is something that could be viable? And if so, is it something we could just go ahead and do, or would it probably rely on a bit more central government support?
I just want a fair question, Josh. I just wonder whether this is something that would be discussed by next council in the refresh, and that you're just reminding officers that this is a good thing to put in there. I don't disagree with you.
Yes, but just to clarify, I guess I'd like to know if this is something that is already on officers' radar.
Okay.
We are aware of it, and Batista started looking into it, but I can't speak to it in detail. But it would be something, seeing as this report is looking, back. Looking forward, we can bring that, those types of initiatives to you in the future for consideration once we've talked to finance and other parties within council itself.
Okay, cool. Thank you. No, that's all good. Just wanted to signal that. So overall, my high level, this is fantastic. Please keep up the great work. Really, really happy to see this, and excited about hopefully progressing this more in the new triennium.
Jim wants to make comments.
Yeah, just through the chair, we've got a presentation that got deferred from a week or two ago from what do they call themselves?
it's the program to support, so they get ratepayers assistance scheme. Within that, there's options for councils to support improvements, and that comes down to individual councils' choices. So that will be considered in the conversation in the workshop that you'll be getting.
Does that answer your question, Councillor Hayward, or your comment?
Almost, Mātua Upoko. Noting that, if, for those who are paying attention, I wrote, as Councillor Trillan was writing, RAS, that's what you're looking for. It is, as has been alluded to, potentially one of the few mechanisms available to us as a council where we can be part of the solution without acknowledging viability on any personal property. And that brings me to point 2, which is around the adaptation measures. Noting that this report, which has tried to, at a high level, give a summary of all the things that have been happening on the ground in the previous reporting period, it does allude to work that is coming up for the next period. One of those, I suspect, may be a conversation around RAS. Does that also include conversation around Te Hinga Aro Order? And that's the phraseology, for lack of a better word, that the working group on managed retreat has come up with, instead of using the words managed retreat, considering that there is a related issue that is not referenced in here, and that is the potential harm to and damage to private property, notwithstanding the fact that this report focuses mostly and almost exclusively on council assets as part of adaptation.
So I can speak to that. So, of course, we brought to you the framework for our adaptation program, and it was in 3 phases. So the first phase was looking at council's assets. The second phase was, finding out whether there was any government funding available. We now know that's nothing. And moving into the third phase, which is talking to the community. And those conversations are what we need to have with our community. So James has only been here 2 weeks, and we've been without an adaptation advisor for a few months. So he is working on, at the moment, on a methodology for going out and talking to people, and that includes all the options under this broad term of adaptation, which includes managed retreat. We're not going to obviously go into the community and start talking about managed retreat in the first instance, but it's a long process, and there will be obviously a lot of conversations to ensure everyone's on the same page about what we're talking about when we go to the community. So you will see the methodology that I suspect that James comes up with, and you will know in advance when we're going out and starting to talk to the community. Does that answer your question?
It answers most, but I do have a sub related to this. Knowing that I have not seen the recommendations from the Climate Assembly, is there much language in there that can be foreshadowed with regards to the role that council plays in supporting private property owners around this issue of community-led adaptation? I don't want to use managed retreat. I think the language, the MFE has given us really good guidance on the kupu that can be used in this, and actually managed retreat isn't really necessarily solving the problem. If you've got a property at the bottom near Champion Street, moving that property up isn't physically away from that property isn't going to do much for everybody else on that street, but lifting them up physically would.
And the recommendations from the Climate Assembly are available on the website, on Ngāti Toa's website, so everyone can have a look at them, just for everyone's information. I haven't got it in front of me. I can't recall anything about that specifically, but it's certainly something that is in our council's work program anyway. And we are talking to the officers from Ngāti Toa regularly, so I'll raise that with them as well and see where, what their thinking is around this. They're doing a climate strategy at the moment also.
It's a request for officers. A while back, when the Assembly was getting close to completion, they were signposting that they had prepared a report, and I asked officers at that point in time if a copy could be furnished for councillors, and they said they hadn't received it, and then I had assumed that there would be one that would be distributed to councillors. So noting that it is available on the website, which is a pleasant surprise, miharo to that, can we have a copy sent around to all the councillors, please?
Uploaded to
no
Diligent,
problem.
you mean?
Well, in either case, a copy to be furnished with councillors.
No problem.
Excellent. No more questions. Kia ora.
Councillor Philo, and then Councillor Duncan.
A few months ago, we had a workshop here, and it was about the planting of trees in our city. It was Parks who was leading it. I'm just wondering why that's not mentioned in this strategy specifically.
I think this is like a general report, high level of all the types of things that have gone on. And if we wanted to actually put every single initiative in here, it would be a much longer report. So we just tried to keep it reasonably high level.
So it is still part of the strategy. It was just you're just trying to keep it briefer.
Well, of course, what we're doing here is we're reporting on a previous strategy, and which is existing until we refresh the new one, and let's say that some of the wording and actions and things are a little bit outmoded now. They kind of need to be refreshed, which is why we're doing the refresh. So I haven't got the list in front of me, and Baptiste would have known if there was a specific one about replanting. But remembering that lots of the initiatives aren't done, they don't need to be done, as others have said, under the banner of climate change, but they achieve multiple benefits to the city. Like, for example, we planted the wetland. We've done that, primarily to control flooding, but that's also, reduce sediment going into the harbour and heavy metals and that sort of thing, and it's visually very appealing for people. So some of these things, they don't have to be in a climate strategy to have climate benefits, if you know what I mean.
Yep.
So trying to get that balance right.
It was Parks that was leading it, but obviously it
Yes.
has really strong benefits in cooling down
Yes.
areas.
Yeah,
So-
absolutely. We have got some actions around that in our draft of the refresh strategy coming forward to you in the next triennium.
Helen?
If you don't wish to comment, Mike.
Thanks. I was just going to say that riparian planting, you'll see feature more in the strategic priority report on the harbour, as Helen's just alluded to. So yes, there are co-benefits, but we're reporting on planting numbers and that kind of stuff when we come to you with a report on the harbour. But yes, there are definitely co-benefits and overlaps, as Helen's just pointed out.
Does anyone else wish to comment? Oh, sorry.
Yeah, no, look, I echo the sentiments about what a great report this is that covers things really comprehensively. And the Climate Assembly, it's great. It adds a whole lot to it for us. Just one thing that struck me as I read through the paper on page 58, Focus Area 3, the very last item there said that the shared pathway to Papakofi was partially funded. I understood that was fully funded.
It was fully funded by NZTA. Yep.
So this is not right then? Yeah?
It's an error.
Apologies, that's obviously an error on our part.
Great, I'm relieved. Thank you.
But you'll update it before it goes anywhere? Yeah.
There's no one else. I'd like to make a couple of comments and ask a couple of questions, and it's particularly around, I guess it focuses around use of language. The first question I'd like to ask is on page 50, under set clearer targets, second paragraph. Can you tell me what that paragraph means? Porirua City's climate pollution is reduced by 5%. Blah, blah, blah. Sorry, and then it goes, however, to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees centigrade, the city needs to reduce emissions at a much higher rate, etc. It is factually incorrect to lead people to believe, which I believe the sentence does, that by Porirua reducing its emissions further, that it is going to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees centigrade. So I would like to ask you to change that to something which is factually correct. Mayor Baker, you wish to make a comment?
I did want to make a comment because it's a great report, but I think you're being very picky. And if this city
Excuse-
doesn't, no, let me finish and then you can go. This city doesn't do something and we all work together, there will be implications. Now, you may not like the wording. Personally, I have no problem with it. But thank you for the report.
Excuse me, Mayor Baker, but if Councillor Duncan can make that comment and be accepted, then I am also able to make a comment about something that is factually incorrect and misleading. So I just make that comment.
I think it's ambiguous.
Ambiguous. Fair
Yeah,
enough.
I think if we did this, we will not on our own affect the world.
Thank you. That's all I'm trying to say, Chief Executive. I qualify this by saying I think the direction of the report around strategic priorities is excellent as well. And I'll look forward to seeing a refresh where we can have further discussion.
How about I put in the word contribution to?
That's fine. That's fine. I don't have a problem with that. You wish to make a comment, Councillor Hayward?
I would not to disagree with your decision as chair. That's not my intention. And I think part of the reason why the comparison to Councillor Duncan's point was that it felt as though it was a relatively straightforward change that most people would understand was, to not create something that was truly factually incorrect. There is, I think, as the CEO responded to your point, ambiguity. And I guess, and this is a lesson for me as much as it is for everybody else, including yourself, if there is language that is not appropriate, it is sometimes useful to bring an alternative language to the table to assist officers in reaching a solution that we can all agree with. That would be my only contribution to the debate.
I don't disagree with you. I take your point. I also note that I did raise this point when at the chair's briefing, right? So I just note that. I'm not criticising anyone or anything, but I did raise the point. I also raised the second point, which I'm about to raise now, which is the use of the term climate pollution. I note that Josh himself did not use that term. You used emissions when the reading was climate pollution. You used emissions, all right? So what the term pollution means, that pollution is the presence or introduction into the environment of a substance which has harmful or poisonous effect. I note that CO2 is not a poisonous gas, right? Carbon monoxide or nitrous oxide is poisonous gases as the result of combustion. All I'm asking is that and emissions and greenhouse gas emissions and climate pollution are used interchangeably throughout this report. I just want to see a standard phrase, right? I personally think, and others will probably disagree, that climate pollution is also ambiguous and misleading, when the term could probably be greenhouse gas emissions, or some of you who are more up on this might want to use climate warming greenhouse gas emissions, but I think we should use a standard term or phrase to tell people what we're talking about. I think climate pollution is misleading. So, Josh, you might want to comment on that.
Yeah, thanks. I first of all, Ross, thank you for your indication that I'm some sort of authority when it comes to climate-related policy. I do appreciate that. And using that position, I'd just like to say I think that the use of climate pollution is entirely appropriate. I think carbon may not in of itself be poisonous. The wording that you used there was
sorry, hold on. No, you're talking
carbon dioxide.
Carbon dioxide, not carbon.
Yeah, carbon dioxide has a harmful or poisonous effect, which is different to something being innately poisonous. If you drink way too much water, you get water poisoning. Water's not poisonous. I think it's entirely appropriate personally, but that's just my view.
I understand your view. I note your view. No, I'm not going to stop, Mayor Baker.
Point of order.
While the election's coming.
Point of order.
Look, but I'm also not going to die in the ditch. But what I would suggest is that we have a common term used throughout. I note that the graphs and everything talk about emissions, and they're greenhouse gas emissions, and that's the only point I want to make. I'm for the report in terms of what it's saying, particularly going forward, looking at adaptation. And so I just wanted to make those 2 points. One point has already been addressed, the ambiguity. Thank you for that. And the other point, is a work in progress. I've made my point, and those that want to listen can listen. Those that want to continue to be misled can continue to be misled. So
Point of order.
I noted.
I request that the vote be now put.
Yes, I agree with you. So I shall now put this to the vote. All those in favour?
Aye.
Those against? Carried. So that now brings us... I've made my points. Yes, glossary of terms would be a good idea. A legend. Right, I'm now going to move to public excluded. So I'm moving a motion. We go to and seconded by Councillor Hayward. All those in favour? Aye. Those against? Carried. So